Good morning. Good morning, friends. This is Biniam on the Checkin In podcast. Welcome to episode 48. Today is Tuesday, September the 7th. Today is the day that the school starts, for the most part, officially over here. And so life kind of all goes into full swing. Good morning, friends. I see you coming in on the YouTube live stream, the Instagram live stream, and the TikTok live stream. Glad to have you guys join in for a few moments this morning as we engage in some heavyweight lifting for our edification, our betterment. And so I'm so thrilled to have you guys coming on. So I see friends. Hello, everyone. Some new friends, some old friends. This is fantastic. I'm glad to have you guys join for a few moments. This is the podcast that I love investing my time in the mornings because first and foremost, you might think I'm doing this for you. Actually, no, I'm doing this for me first and foremost. This is a podcast where I ask self-reflective questions. And in the process of considering those questions and answering them, I invite you in that process with me to grow together. 3 big pillars that we focus on in this podcast, and they are as follows. Number 1, actually, let me tell you all 3 first. I have them in these words summarized: awareness, kindness, and happiness. Awareness, kindness, and happiness. These are 3 things that I value immensely in my life, and I want to continue to grow in my skill in applying them into my life. Number 1, the awareness piece is so critical, I think. The awareness piece where we can get to know ourselves as well as we can, so we know what we're presenting to the world around us, so that we know how we're embracing the world around us. And this is something that's so critical and important, I think. The more we know ourselves well, the more we're able to make some amazing and appropriate decisions for ourselves in life. But in the absence of knowing ourselves, I think we're sort of fumbling our way forward. Number 2, the kindness piece is also so critical. For the longest time, and I think many of you struggle in this area of how to be gracious to ourselves, how to be kind to ourselves in the process of change, because we are change, aren't we? And finally, the happiness piece. And I like pursuing that. Today's question we are considering is a pretty good one. And perhaps for some of you, it is about time that you focused on this question, because it may be the part in your life currently that is lending to a slow progress or a slow moving forward. The question we're answering is, are there any toxic relationships in your life that you need to remove? Are there any toxic relationships in your life that you need to remove? Now, as we consider this question, we're going to look at those 3 pillars that we love to focus on in this podcast: awareness, kindness, and happiness. I think all 3 of these pillars are hit square on as we consider the parameters of this question. Are there any toxic relationships in your life that you need to remove? What does that look like? Oh, I can't wait to get into this. But first, as we always do, we kind of consider the question and consider the merits of this question. Why is this question even worthwhile spending time on? And how is it going to benefit us in its application? So, any toxic relationships in your life that you need to remove? This makes me think, first and foremost, how each and every one of us is like easily influenced, because we are in community for the most part. We are amongst other people around us. We are kind of rubbing shoulders, if you will, figuratively speaking, with those that we share life with. And in that process, something happens by way of um, um, uh, influence, if you will. Someone's asking, where can I find Ben Asmer or the Ben ASMR? Okay, so if you search maybe on Spotify, Ben ASMR narrations as in reading, that's where you'll find it. Ben Asmer narrations, all one word. That's where you'll find that podcast. That is especially for those who love the sound of my voice. And in hearing my voice, I thought I can encourage you to listen to my voice if you enjoy it that much. And many say they find my voice calming, they find my voice soothing, they find my voice encouraging. And so I want to offer that as a gift to you, but I want to do it in a way where you can also listen to something worthwhile listening to. And so right now I'm currently reading this book by Brene Brown called Rising Strong. Fantastic book. You some amazing things along the way by insights as I share things that influence me. And here's one of those that I benefit from. So I'm committing myself to reading maybe like a chapter a day. Can we get oh yeah? Is that what you're asking for? You're so welcome. You're so welcome. I'm glad to serve you guys. And so I read books that I find worthwhile to focus on and grow from. And so I want to share those insights from these books, these amazing authors, with you as you're listening to my voice. I'm going to offer that for free because I don't think I can charge for that. I might run into some copyright issues, but I think it's totally legit for me to read those books for free and serve you with my time and with my voice that way. So I'm more than happy to serve you in that manner. But in this question today, I was reflecting, first of all, as I think of the question, are there any toxic relationships in your life that you need to remove? When I consider this question, I think of how as a member of society, I'm easily influenced by others around me. I'm easily influenced by others around me because I don't think it's realistic for us to say, I'm going to go through life and no one's ever going to change me or affect the way I think or see the world. I think we are a process and change as we keep on growing in our experience. We're a process and change as we see people influencing us, coming around us, sharing their perspectives with us, arguing with us. And in essence, I think we're a different product when we start interacting with other people. Even you guys and I, hey, hello, my friends. How are you? I see you guys coming on. I'll give you a quick wave when I see you coming in so I can keep on my train of thoughts. So I think even in this relationship that you guys are in with me, where you're watching my content and where you're following my work and you're being encouraged, there is a transaction there that leaves you a different person, I believe. Maybe I encourage you, I inspire you. Maybe you can't even stand me and you're like, okay, I'm not going there again. Whatever it is, there is an exchange. There is a transfer of energies, if you will. There is an influence swapping that's going on. Either you're being influenced or you are doing the influencing, in which case you're bringing that element of change into your own world. And I think each and every one of us are part of this whole process where we're actively being transformed over time. So if we are a process and change on a daily basis, if we are, my TikTok didn't update me on the live. Oh man, I'm so sorry, my friend. I'm not sure why it's not featuring, but I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. If we are at that process and change, a really good question to ask is, how are we changing? Are we changing in ways that are really helpful going forward? Or are we changing in ways that are subtle and imperceptible in the opposite direction that may be concerning when we are brought to awareness of that shift or change? That's a really important question, isn't it? Especially when we're asking the questions, are there any toxic relationships in your life that you need to remove? To answer this question, it's first really necessary that we are aware that we are changing on a daily basis. And I think that's my argument, that we are changing every day because we are interacting with people in general. We're changing in some pathway or in some direction. The question is, which trajectory are you changing towards? Are you changing toward for the better or not? And this really involves that component of self-awareness. How aware are you of how you are changing on a daily basis? How carefully are you keeping track of the shifts that are going on in your life in the way you are evolving and changing as a person? This relationship is called mutualism. Both of you and your viewers benefit from one another. That's awesome. I like it. Thanks for the nerd tip there, my dear friend. Real, that's fantastic. I'm digging it. That is awesome. So that's a really good question of how are we changing, especially in relation to this question, because this question calls for an awareness in a specific expression. It says, are there any toxic relationships in your life that you need to remove? This first and foremost calls for awareness of ourselves. Awareness of ourselves and saying, where are the influences that are coming into my life that are impacting me right now? And then those influences, are these good influences or are these toxic influences? You see how the awareness piece really plays heavy in this one here? The more aware we are of what's coming in, what we're allowing to come in and influence and affect us, whether it's good or toxic, the more we're able to answer this question forthrightly, transparently, honestly. That's really important, isn't it? And so, what kind of influences are coming into your life? Are you able to discern and be aware of toxic influences in your life? Now, when we say toxic relationships or toxic influences, we're talking about those investments in your being in your essence that are not helpful, the ones that are going to discourage you from growing as a person, the ones that are going to take away from you as an individual. What are those elements that are not really helpful in yours and my life? And that awareness is, says say for real, that awareness is what helps you move forward. It supports your reasoning behind doing anything. I love it. I love that part because it's not a bad thing that we're in community and that we're being influenced by others around us. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think that's a really healthy and happy thing. But the critical part is being aware of what kind of influences we're allowing, how we're able to establish our boundaries so that we have the good kind of influences coming through and we're able to keep out the toxic or unhelpful influences. So there's a really strong component in this morning's question that calls for awareness in what kind of shifts and changes you're going through, I'm going through, where those changes are coming from, and if those changes are good, amazing, healthy, encouraging, uh, foundationally supporting influences, or if they are toxic. How can you identify a toxic relationship? Arian, that's a fantastic question. Great question. Here is how I do it simply. I'm looking at, am I happy with the pathway that I'm going on? Or am I discouraged with the pathway that I'm on? For me, that's how I understand it at a very basic level. Am I encouraged by the way I'm going? Meaning, am I growing in awareness of myself and saying, man, I'm becoming a really good specimen of humanity. I'm becoming someone that I'm really proud to say, I love me for me because of the way I'm evolving. Or are there things that I'm struggling with? When I see myself in the mirror, for example, do I hate what I see? Meet my fiance, Jayla. Hello, Jayla. Glad to have you on here. The rookie says, hello. This what we talk about. When I was working at McDonald's, customers smile at customers all the time and don't get affected by the negativity or anything. That's a really good point, the rookie. And I'll see if I can touch on that in just a few moments here. But to be able to find out where the unhelpful influences are, it first of all calls awareness from yourself saying, where am I going in life? Am I happy with what's going on inside? Am I aware of how I'm growing and evolving as an individual? Am I able to say, hell yes, I love what I see and what I'm becoming? Or, oh, man, I feel like I'm stuck and I feel like I'm not growing in confidence. I feel like the kind of way that I lack in patience is becoming more and more prominent, or whatever expression that you're not encouraged by. Consider that awareness in yourself and then try to do some detective maneuvers and thinking through, where is this coming from? Who are the people that influence me? I remember whenever I spend time with this person, I always find myself discouraged as a result of spending time with them. And they never really encourage me. They never help me grow in my ability to move forward. And so that is one helpful way, Arian, that I would say you could find out who are the discouraging or toxic influences or relationships in your life. Who are the ones that are who are the ones that are taking away from you and you feel like depleted as a result of time with them, or who are the ones that are encouraging you to become a better version of yourself? The ones in the former category are the toxic relationships, I would suggest. Consider yourself, how you're feeling, where you're going, how you're feeling about where you're going, and then ask that question. Where are these influences coming from? And how can I identify the ones that are unhelpful? How can I identify the ones that are? I would say, for example, I design my aim, my intention is to encourage you guys. I want to be a helpful influence. I do not want to be a toxic influence. I want to get your attention so you can think about the things that I'm sharing. So that, because in sharing it with you, I want to influence you to grow into a better version of yourself. Does that make sense? Now consider those people in your life who are doing the opposite. I recently broke a really close connection of mine because this individual was allowing toxic influences into their lives. I said, I want to encourage you, but I can't do that if you keep on allowing like toxicity elsewhere. It's like you're letting my good investment kind of flow out because this person is just coming and taking away from you. I can't do that. And so you need to make a call of where you're going to commit yourself. Does that make sense? I hope that's helpful, Arian. You're always so formal. Many people of your reaching never seen you in a casual hoodie. That's one way he's established his connections between us and him is, I think, my calming voice, I think. Thanks for the kind words, friends. So that's what I would say, Arian. Great question. I'm thinking of Where are those influences coming? How are they affecting me? Now, as you're aware of what kind of influences are coming in, if you're identifying those toxic influences that are coming in that are not serving you well, the next component of this podcast, which is the kindness piece, where we just talked about the awareness piece of yourself, but the kindness piece towards yourself is also really critical. As you're being aware of what's going on internally and how people are interacting with you, yes, it helps things so much. It definitely makes a lot of sense. Glad to hear, Arian. As you are being aware of the kind of influences that are coming in, both the good and the unhelpful, it's really necessary to apply a second measure, critical to apply this second measure, and that is the piece of kindness. Because when you see yourself in a place that you're not really happy with, the usual response is kind of um, discouragement and disillusionment and unhappiness can ensue, where you're saying, man, I'm such a terrible person because I'm not where I need to be or where I want to be. When that happens, it can be super discouraging, right? It can be so discouraging because you're like, like I'm terrible for this. That is an unhelpful response. That's an unhelpful progression. And it's unhelpful because it doesn't give you space to be human. Can I suggest something? You were not made to be perfect. I was not made to be perfect. You and I were made to be human. And in our humanity, part of that process is that we're going to be fumbling our way. We're going to be making mistakes. We're going to be making messes along the way. How can you and I be kind to ourselves in the midst of making mistakes? Let's put it as a for sure. The point of being human is that we're going to mess our way forward to becoming better versions of ourselves. That's what it means to be a human being. I'm a messy person. You guys are messy as well. But in our messiness, can we grow in a good pathway? Not to become perfect. I don't think we'll see perfection on this side of death. That is unreasonable. I think it's a goal that isn't really feasible. But can we be okay with our messiness and express some kindness to ourselves in the midst of growing as human beings? That's the kindness piece that I'm asking you to consider as you consider your answer to this question. Are there any toxic relationships in your life that you need to remove? That's really helpful because in the absence of that, we continue to discourage ourselves. We continue to beat ourselves up. We continue to pound ourselves further down. It's really an unhelpful context. What should you do, says Arian, if you do struggle to grow by your mistakes, even if you don't want to or try to? What should you do if you struggle to grow by your mistakes? Can I say it starts off with an acceptance that this is where you're at? This is what I'm encouraging you to consider today. Let's start off with just with today, okay? Let's do something manageable. I'm not saying be a finished product today. I'm saying today as a starting base. Is it possible that you and I could start off on this premise of acceptance of ourselves where we are? That's a really critical starting place. I'm trying not to get emotional again, but when I talk about these kind of things, it just gets me really deep. Can we start off by way of accepting ourselves for where we are today? Arian, can you accept yourself for who you are today, messes and all? But don't forget, in the midst of your messes, there's also amazingness too. There's amazingness amongst your messiness. There's beautiful roses amongst the weeds in your garden. Can I say it that way? And those roses need to be identified and celebrated, even as you acknowledge the weeds that need to be pulled out. Does that make sense? And that just starts with awareness of saying, hey, here's this beautiful garden that is me. It's a mess of a garden, and I'm okay with it as it is today, because this is my starting point today. This is the place where I'm going to launch off of today to try being that better version of myself for me today. That is a really important starting piece, I would say. Does that make sense? Can you start off with that premise of acceptance today? I struggle with heavy depression and it's often hard for me to accept myself. But yeah, you're definitely right. If you can start off with that place of acceptance, saying, all right, today I'm going to give myself a pass for all the stuff that I'm not happy with. I'm going to give myself a pass, not because I'm going to settle for it, but I'm going to say, here's my starting point today. Here's the place from which I'm going to jump off of to whatever that next level is that I want to work towards. Make that a manageable bite-sized piece. Any mistakes I did, says Hotshot, I've learned each day and try to make it right. But why still the same? Um, hmm. It's nice to see progression. So, Hotshot, let me answer your question because that's a really important question there. The question is, even though I'm learning and growing each day, I still feel like I'm in the same place. One, you may be failing at showing kindness to yourself by way of acknowledgement in those things that you are working your way through. Sometimes it's hard for us to see how we have grown through an experience or gone through a season and become something better. It might be hard for us to see that because we have yet to learn how to be kind to ourselves by way of acknowledging, hey, I'm really glad that I'm seeing the progression here. Your progression may be difficult to see the hotshot, in which case it's fantastic being part of a supportive community of friendships or connections or relationships or family members that are going to invest in you, who are going to be actively on the lookout for that progression because they know what they're watching for, who can say, hey, here's what I see, and I want to celebrate that. I want to encourage you because I see that growth. It's super massive encouraging when someone comes to you and says, hey, I've seen you and I've known you over the last little while, and I love what I see. That's really important. So it might be that you just need someone to come alongside who's going to say, I see how you're growing as an individual and I love what I see. That's an amazing gift to have that kind of friendship or that kind of influence. So consider who that might be in your life, hotshot. Those individuals who you can say, hey, I'm struggling with seeing how I'm growing or evolving as a person. Could you help me identify some things that you've seen by way of change in a good way in my life? That's a really helpful thing. And ask them to do that every once in a while, saying, hey, just so you know, I really appreciate this. I know you've been working on this element here, and I value that. That is really helpful too. My dear friends, I'm getting to the close of the podcast. I haven't even answered the question, but let me touch on the third point. I talked about the awareness piece in knowing where your influences are coming from, the ones that are helpful, the ones that are toxic or unhelpful, and then the kindness piece as you're acknowledging where you are and accepting and saying, here's my starting place as I consider even those toxic relationships and where I need to pivot to. I'm going to start off by accepting myself and saying, I'm not a bad person. I'm a worthwhile person. I'm someone that desperately needs to be here in this world because I have something to contribute, because I have something to share, because I have something to engage in. Your existence matters. Listen one more time because someone who's listening to this may need to hear this. I got your attention. Your existence, it matters. You desperately matter. I want you to hear that from me today. If this is the first time you're ever hearing that, you've never heard that, let me just say it one more time. From me to you, I may not know you, but I already know this. I already know this, and I'm happy to prove it to you if we were to sit down for coffee together. Your existence desperately matters, and I'm glad you exist. I want to celebrate you for you. So, hear that from me to you with a full heart that I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you exist. I want someone to hear that today who desperately needs to hear that. The third piece is happiness. So, awareness, kindness towards yourself. And then the happiness piece comes when you are starting to grow, hotshot. You're starting to grow towards this awareness and then experience of, hey, I'm able to identify the toxic influences that I'm able to now push away, shift that relationship, redefine what that could look like, establish some boundaries. When you're able to do that and process some of these things that are taking up the happiness piece, the things that are uncomfortable by way of worry, the things that are uncomfortable by way of anxiety, the things that are uncomfortable by way of anger or frustration, all these things that take up so much real estate in our hearts and our minds, the more we're able to process these toxic influences that bring us to these experiences. As we process them, they start clearing out and making space for happiness. And I love being happy. I love being happy. But happiness takes work to get to. And the work that's invested in getting to the happy stage is processing all those uncomfortable emotions internally first. So, this is why all of these pillars are so critically answered in today's question. Are there any toxic relationships in your life that you need to remove? I like that part where it says that you need to remove, not that you want to remove. Want is kind of like a, hey, I wish this were to happen. No, that you need to remove moves you into that element of execution. How are you going to establish this frontier whereby you are going to address and you're going to start navigating in a different context this connection? That's super important. It's massively important, my friends. So critical for your evolution, for your growth as an individual. So I like that word that you need to remove. What are those toxic relationships in your life that you need to remove? Consider it kind of like sprinkling it in the fall. We're in fall right now, or approaching fall. So let me answer my question in the last 2 or 3 minutes before the podcast ends. Let me say, for the longest time in the past, I definitely let toxic relationships into my life, and I don't think they really affected me in an adverse way. But I mean, I let them into my life and I let their influence affect me, because we're easily affected and we change because of the people we allow or don't allow in our lives. So it definitely did affect me. Hotshot says, in McDonald's, where I worked at, I see kids are happy giving them those crayons and books. That makes me happy all the time and shifts my anger. No, I totally hear you, that Hotshot. That's amazing. Yeah. You're finding something in which it influences you in a good way. That's a helpful thing, right? Consider those things now that are unhelpful and consider how you're going to shift that relationship. In my life, once upon a time, I was not judicious. I was not careful in the way that I allowed influences into my life. Now, however, I am so aware of the kind of influences that are coming into my life. I'm so aware of the kind of influences that are taking up space or that are vying for space in my mind and in my heart. I'm so aware of it on an ongoing moment by moment basis. I'm doing a calibration of sorts. I'm weighing, if you will, the kind of influences that people are bringing into my sphere of space. I'm so aware of what those influences look like. And so being aware of those influences and how they're affecting me is a critical part of my self-care. I'm aware of, hey, do I feel good because this person is in my sphere, because they're in my bubble, if you will? Or am I more depleted as a result of them being around? And because I feel like I have a very strong personality, I have a very strong idea of how things ought to go or shouldn't go, because I have that ability, I consider myself an influencer in the real sense. When we spend time together, I'm going to be doing a lot of influencing. That's just the context in which I've come to understand the way my experience in life is. And it's not a bad thing. It's actually a fantastic thing. I'm super grateful for it. But as it happens like that, I'm also aware of those feelings and influences that I experience as a result of people in my space. I'm always on the lookout for who are those people that are going to influence me. Hell yes, I want people to influence me, but I'm very careful those who are going to influence me. Is this in a good pathway? Because if it's not, I'm going to be doing the influencing. If they're going to influence me in an amazing way, I'll be like, hell yes, if it's an amazing thing. But if it's unhelpful, I'll be like, nope, we're going to switch the narrative here, and I'm going to be doing the influencing. I can do that because my personality is very strong. I've got a very strong personality that can weigh itself in and shift the course of the engagement. I feel like that's one of my superpowers or one of my strengths. Your bow tie has been looking good. Thank you, my friend. But along those lines, when it comes to the influencing, I find that I'm just in that zone that, for me, it's not a struggle. It's not a struggle to be able to say, no, here's where we're going to go and here's how we're going to go about getting there. So that's my experience. There aren't any toxic relationships in my life that needs to be removed, because when they do come into my life, I influence them, and either they stick around to be influenced by me, or they just don't survive my company, and they're like, peace out, this is not my jam. In which case I say, been fun, see you soon. We're a growth in process, and as we grow together, it's really important to note that we don't want to be prescriptive. We don't want to be prescriptive in saying you should be like this or you should not be like this. That is really unhelpful, because each and every one of us is so unique and distinct in our makeup. And we need to give value for our diversity. We need to celebrate what it looks like to be you and me to be me. So I'm not saying become a clone of me, but I'm saying in the way that we are ourselves, whoever we are, how can we continue to implement those boundaries that can help us grow in our self-care and our self-health, like our mental health, if you will. That's so important. And that's why I invest time in this podcast. This podcast is a labor of love for me. I love being able to spend time with you guys and share with you. Here's how I process me getting to be a better version of myself. Many people look at me and say, "Mai, you've already made it though. You're already like there." And I'm saying, maybe I've got a lot of things figured out, but I had to learn through some very painful experiences and terrible lessons that I made along the way. But I want to speak hope now to those who are following in my footsteps to say, it's not game over. And while I'm intending to be an influence to you guys, while I'm intending to be that kind of a growth factor in your own experience, I'm also aware that I need to keep on growing. I'm still a human being who wants to have that courtesy of being messy. I'm going to make mistakes along the way. I'm going to hurt some of your feelings, perhaps. I'm going to say things I'm going to need to apologize for. I'm going to be human. And I'm going to be a hell yes of a human who is growing through these experiences. And so I'm not a work that's finished yet. I have a long way to go. I want to invite you to join me in that process. This has been episode 48 of the Ben Checkin In podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. I will see you guys tomorrow. Much love to you. Happy Tuesday. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.